Question before we start. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately started managing your face, your voice, your hands, your thoughts all at once? Yeah, then you're in the right place. You're listening to the Spacious Brain podcast, where real neurodivergent humans with real jobs and real daily chaos overshare with pride. Minus the glossy, my ADHD is my superpower nonsense. Hi, I'm Noemi, a scientist, a neurodiversity coach. Yes, someone who will absolutely derail into a story from when I was 12 because I'm ADHD and tangents are my love language. If you ever felt alone or felt like the Temu version of neurodivergent because you're not an entrepreneur, not a CEO, and you forget to eat and drink on the same day, you're in the right place. Let's keep this real. Today, I'm joined by Yana, a late diagnosed ADHDer, a parent, and a former corporate girly who could walk into a new company and look like she'd worked there for 10 years. From the outside, she was the one with the insight and the results. Behind the scenes, she was rehearsing meetings, crashing at home, and wondering why life felt so hard. We talk about burnout, belonging, and what shifts when your whole family is neurodivergent, and what happens when you finally stop trying to power through. Hello, Yana. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
And I will start with the usual opening question. Who is Yana?
You've got Yana on here today. And, who is Yana? It's a question that gets answered very differently depending on whether you ask in the 2000s, the 2020, which is before diagnosis, or now after a late ADHD diagnosis. And because you're asking me now, considering that growth, of course, but because you're asking me now, Yana is a late identified ADHDer, also a parent, also an ADHD advocate, because turns out that after 4 decades of living life without knowing what you're up against, once you understand, you've got a lot to say. So I'm coming to you as that at the moment.
That is brilliant. This is exactly where I wanted to land. You started saying that you were diagnosed with ADHD later in life. Can you tell us a bit more about that? What led you to first seeking a diagnosis and then what happened after?
Yeah, it was through another person's experience in my life. And, before we started this, you mentioned about, your vision for this podcast and how community is important and the space you want to create. And interestingly, I fell into ADHD and looking for diagnosis through somebody in my community. So my sister got assessed for ADHD in 2025, time in the summer, and I stayed really close to her process and supporting her. And light bulbs started going off. Like a lot of the things that she was um, assessed for were things that experiences that I also resonated with. And for me at that time, I was kicking against the possibility that I had ADHD because, in the world of stigma and misconception that we live in, it didn't kind of sit right with me. Oh, I'm not that person. No, I actually am not hyperactive in this way. So it was a lot of no, that's not going to be me. And I went in for an autism assessment actually, and I got diagnosed for autism. But then not everything landed into place with that diagnosis. So I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get to the bottom of this because after many years of self-help and going down self-help roads, trying to accommodate myself better in the world as an adult, as a parent, as a corporate girly, if you will, something was always not adding up. So I was like, I've gone all of this way. I've done all of this self-awareness and personal growth and whatever. Let me explore this as well. And turns out I'm as ADHD as they come. So that's how it happened. Unintentionally, really.
And tell me a bit more about like Yana before the diagnosis. you said you were a corporate girly. What does that mean, and how did you experience your work life?
Yeah, so I have always been in desk jobs after a few years in English language training for adults. And
Hmm.
after that, I fell into the corporate world across IT and finance and insurance and legal. And I've changed environments a lot actually, because although I was doing good in these environments, and I had results to show for it and contributions to show for it, when I went back home, I felt exhausted and lacking, and sometimes even wounded by a comment or two. You kind of, in my recent years in corporate, I used to do business change management and business transformation. And you know very well that those are high visibility, big teams, important stakeholders. So no matter how I tried and showed up in a better and better way, every day or across the years as I was changing those roles and growing in the roles, it just something was not hitting the mark. And that created a lot of anxiety for me. And that created a lot of kind of inner talk that is, I don't want to turn this into a negative thing. So it was just not helpful. So, long story short, I felt lacking in those environments, although I was achieving the results that were asked of me in my roles.
So, you say that you were successful, you were doing good, you were getting the feedback that you were doing good, and you had things to show for it. But what were specifically people praising you for? And what were they not seeing behind the scenes?
So, the biggest praise I've had was I get on with things and people and projects really quickly. I get into the role from the street, from another company, and immediately I've created a circle around me. I know the stakeholders, I show up in the conversations, and I seem to get on with people. And that was, for a lot of my managers and supervisors over the years and coworkers, they've said, like, wow, it feels like you've been here 10 years, or it took me years to get to a level with so and so that you are now in this kind of friendly thing, and it helps you work. And the other thing, I've been praised for insight, actually, because, companies like to say, they don't always mean it, but they like to say, oh, we need somebody with fresh eyes, a newcomer with a fresh perspective. Tell us what you think, tell us how you see things. And I would always say, and they would like, that's fantastic insight. So my start in those companies would be very promising, get to know all the people, stakeholders love you, you provide the insight. And then as months go by, I would start getting things like, I wish you'd speak up more in meetings. You had fantastic insight. Why wouldn't you offer it on the spot? So that's when I was also realizing that I was doing that. I didn't know I was doing that there was divergent processing in place, that the insight that I'd provided before, that people actually praised, it was not on a whim kind of thing. I had spent time talking to people and observing and making sense of it all, and then offering that insight. So immediately in me, that was like, I'm not the clever new star employee that people make me out to be. I can't do this, and I don't know why. So, to answer your question, what people are not seeing and things that they can't praise you for, or for good, or for better, or for worse, they also can't catch you on it. It's
Hmm.
that internal space of, I'm not hitting the mark, I'm not meeting the expectation. And it's silly because some things like this, for example, there's a steerco meeting, let's say, and I've worked hard to prepare for, progress updates and your ideas and everything lined up and your slide decks, and you represent the whole business change work stream. And I would kind of rehearse and get ready for these meetings. And the moment that a discussion would come up, I'm like, I need time to think. So this is just the one example, but across the board, I'm realizing now that a lot of that would be ADHD at play.
And what was the cost, of always being that perfect employee, right? Because at the end, like, you arrived as the star employee, but as you were saying, there were things in the background that were constantly, we can say, probably draining you.
right? So,
Exhausting.
yeah. So, what was the cost?
So that was, first of all, I didn't have any energy to live or think or breathe or enjoy life or whatever. And I would tell myself, or in close communication with my sister, who is also neurodivergent, we didn't know, or my husband, who was also diagnosed ADHD, but we didn't know. So we sat there relating to each other's experiences, and we're like, everybody is feeling like that after a work day. Everybody just wants to dissociate on the couch, scrolling through, just numbing yourself or constantly snacking to numb yourself and stuff like that. So the cost has been literally taking up, to be able to show up in this way and to be able to play the role, play the part really. It has been taking all of my energy without me knowing. I thought that was normal and I thought everybody was feeling like that. I thought that the fact that I had no energy to, literally show up for my family and so on, or cook a nice meal or spend time with them or play a game together, I thought that was just adulting.
Hmm.
And that was what was required of everybody. It
So,
robbed me of a lot of experiences that you crave in family life and in partnerships and in kind of joy time that I didn't know there was another way around.
but in a way, like not knowing that there was another way, it didn't make you feel as you were failing at adulting, because many of us, we feel like we're not adulting correctly, like there is something wrong with us.
Yeah,
So in a
no.
way, you had a different experience, right? You were like, this is it. This is how it's supposed to be.
How it's done. Yeah, but the thing is, again, internally, I would, and that's why I hate New Year's resolutions, but internally, I would have these things that I wanted to be more of and I wanted to do more of. Like, I love reading. I'm a slow reader, but I love reading. I have curated lists of books I want to read on Goodreads, have researched them. I love hanging out at the library. It's a perfect thing to be doing for me. And yet I'm on my phone in the spare few hours I've got on my day. So a lot of kind of self-deprecating talk around that. It looked successful from the outside. And when I said, for example, to my mom, I have autism and I was in the process of getting ADHD diagnosis and I might be ADHD as well. And she was like, but you look successful. And I'm like, well, by some standards, maybe I am, but I can't keep sustaining this. I can't keep going like that after a second burnout in 2 years, which I didn't understand what it was at all. I just knew the only thing I knew was that it was not sustainable. So maybe, yeah, looked all right on paper and looking from the outside in, but it didn't feel like that.
You touched briefly on the burnout. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it? Like, when was the first one? How did it feel? And particularly now that you have that ADHD lens, how do you understand it differently?
Yeah, well, there's no big story there. I was kind of leading on a business change work stream for a huge, important, high visibility transformation program in legal. And my coworker got unwell. He got off the scene for a while, and I had to take over his job. And then the lead was pulling away, and I have to take over their role. And I started dropping balls a little bit. It was literally like, what am I doing? I can't handle all this. Until one day, I felt the anxiety building up. I felt more and more I had to do, but less and less motivation I had to try and push towards that. It's these things that if you knew how you could potentially spot a burnout, you would spot that. But one day, I just had to have an important call, and I made an excuse 2 seconds before the call that I couldn't show up. This is in hybrid working now in beginning of 2023, was it? So you could do that. And I just lay on the floor and cried. That was everything I could do. Like I couldn't even make a proper explanation to work. This is what's happened. It's nothing. I had to shut everything down and lay on the floor. Nothing else was available. So that was the first time that I kind of started thinking about maybe therapy, maybe kind of I'd been raw dogging self-help for a while, but this felt very different. And I started seeing this therapist who is multidisciplinary therapist
Mm.
who mentioned burnout for the first time. Now, she didn't spot any autism in me, she didn't spot any ADHD in me, but she was just saying, this seems like a burnout. And we had 8 sessions with her and didn't feel much progress, and I didn't feel any better. And I just tried and looked after myself as best as I can. And my hope in this situation was I'm going to change jobs. I'm going to change this horrible toxic role and I'm going to roll into another role and everything will be beautiful. And I had this pattern for a while, things become unbearable at some point around the 6 month mark. I would either push through or change roles. Same things will happen again and again. But that was when it was named for the first time as burnout. Not as autistic burnout, not as ADHD burnout yet, but at least I was kind of understanding that these things happen to others as well. Because I didn't know that. I thought it was just me. I was the broken one.
How long did it take you to recover from that
I think I
burnout?
never did. I think I never did. Pulled myself together, had a nice summer, kind of with the mentality that I'm changing roles and this was not going to loom over me forever. I had found a new role. I was in a long notice period, kind of not too stressful. It was nice. I was like, things are changing for the better. So I kind of nurtured myself through just getting back on my feet, and everything would be different next time, right? Will be different. And then soon after, I started in this other role, much sooner than I expected. Anxiety came back and me feeling this certain way and me not being able to literally do the things that I committed to myself to be able to accommodate myself better. I didn't know that was ADHD back at the time. So it hit even harder towards the summer of 2025. And unrelated to that, my sister had undergone her first assessments, so I stayed closer to her process. So I was now hearing things like, oh, there's ADHD, oh, there's autism, oh, there's this and that. And it started falling together. I see it very differently this burnout time now that I have the diagnosis because I understand it better and I know that it's my nervous system's reaction to things that it didn't have in place in order to feel safe that are just slightly different to what everybody's else's typical thing is. And that's why others would look in and say, oh, you've got this amazing role, getting a senior. I was vice president at some point. Like you're getting everything that should sustain you and should be making you happy, but it's also
Why aren't you?
dragging you down.
No, it's very powerful what you shared because it's the story that I keep hearing. It's the fact that we've lived like the equivalent of 20 lives compressed into one. Like, yeah, I changed so many roles, I changed
Yeah.
so many jobs, all in a very restricted amount of time. And then we have the cost, but it's the cost that nobody sees. All they see is, oh, but you're functional, you're successful, you are good at what you're doing. While in the background, we are literally ghosts. I was just telling somebody this that I can easily do the work of 5 people in a day when I'm in hyper focus mode, which is brilliant. Seen from a company's perspective, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. But then I go home, my husband asks me, what do you want to eat for dinner? And I have a complete meltdown, like absolute meltdown, because by that point, I don't have any executive function anymore. Like there is nothing left. And
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's really hard, isn't it? Because then um I stopped drinking in 2020 and I have an alcohol, I mean, and I don't have alcohol. And I also I don't do much of that. Like I don't go clubbing, people relax in that way. I don't. Mine are more kind of contained, reading and crafting and things like that. And when you don't drink, and I realized I had used drinking to regulate my system, especially throughout my is without even realizing. And although I didn't have a drinking problem, I didn't want to depend on that so much. I was so happy
Yeah.
I stopped drinking in 2020, but then I started eating. Like, you can't just take away what helped you regulate, and nothing takes its place. So then weight would pile up, and I would be like, oh, I love exercising, I love my Latin dance studio, I enjoy movement in this way. Why am I not doing any of that anymore? Why can't I just get myself off the couch and things like that? And then you spiral again into, why am I like that? I feel this was the biggest question throughout my, even from a girl, and then at uni in 20s and 30s. I'm 40 years old now, and my most kind of big headline question has been, why am I like that? Why you like that?
And is it something that you heard just in your head, like it was self-criticism, or did you hear it from others as well?
Well, yeah, I heard it from others a lot, although, polite society wouldn't just spit it at you and say, you're this, all that. I mean, nobody will come to you and say, look at you, you've piled on the weight. No, but in ways like, be more like that, be less of that, like always hearing things that try and correct you back into some space that in consider the right space. And you can't win, really. Like, you can never win. I mean, my mom would ask me why I don't cook more from scratch, and my friends would be like, who cooks from scratch? Get something more convenient and enjoy your time off. I'm like, I actually can't do any of that. Like, what's going on? So secretly behind the scenes, I'd be like, where is my option? What's my option? Like, if I can't do this or can't do that or can't bring up myself to exercise, or I'm still snacking on bull crap. Like, you get me. It's not the most supportive internal talk. And also you do get it from others, though it's not direct. It's in
Mm.
tips and tricks and advice, and, oh, you should do that. Have you looked into that? Well, I have, Janet. Thank you.
And it makes you feel stupid because then you hear everybody else saying, oh, you should try this. It worked wonderfully for me. And you're like, yeah, it doesn't work for me. And then that question comes back. It's like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Why am I the only one that can do that? And for me, for example, has always been as when I was young, that the diet, right? You should lose weight.
Yeah.
So you should try this. You should try that. You should exercise more. And I kept saying, in my own words, I tried to say it doesn't work and it doesn't stick. And it's because for me, for a very long time, food was the way I regulated,
Yeah.
right? It was my dopamine. That was the thing that I was looking for to regulate when I didn't have any dopamine left. Now it's caffeine, but
That's what I was saying. You can't take away one and then be left with nothing. Something needs to come in that place.
this is the thing. We built our infrastructure that helped us surviving through all these years where we didn't have a diagnosis. We didn't know what was happening. And we had all around us society and systems and even families, right? That they were trying to make us fit into a specific neurotype. Like, you need to be like this because this is what normal looks like. And that is exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I'm gonna put all of this effort into this and miss the mark anyways, then why put the effort at all?
Yeah. And you touched it briefly about when you were young, when you were a child. How was Yana as a child and then growing up?
So I am Bulgarian and I went to school in Bulgaria. And in early school, the most praised thing that you could be at school was quiet. So classrooms were arranged in a way that you would just listen to the teacher speak, take a note or two when you were told, and the rest of your job is just sit quietly. So I was great at that because my brain was in its own world, like daydreaming, and later it turned into labels like, you disinterested, or are you even listening to what I'm saying, or she's rude, she doesn't even listen. But back in school, it actually helped me because that was the expectation and I covered it. In terms of doing well or not so well at school, some topics, some subjects I absolutely smashed. Like it was just a pleasure to put the effort in and get into that. And English as a foreign language is one of those things. I absolutely loved it, and the concept of getting into a different culture and all of that. And some of them I really struggled, and I hadn't heard about dyscalculia back then, but numbers and concepts of numbers, ratios and stuff like that didn't come really easy to me. And although I could do well in maths because formulas, and you just kind of change things in the formulas and it's not that hard. Then came other more abstract things in the sciences, especially like physics and chemistry and things like that. And I didn't realize that there might be a bit of a learning disability at play. And of course, it was I'm too stupid for.
Mm.
So loads of praise for being quiet and doing well in certain areas, and not so much critique from the outside world, but loads of critique from my own self, like you two, you're not clever enough to grasp this. This is not for you.
And how did that make you feel?
I felt stupid and I started avoiding the areas that would make me stupid. I started avoiding them even more, almost like try to hack the system with minimal effort, try and just get through and move on because I just knew that no matter how much effort I'd put in, something in me was not enough to connect the dots in physics or chemistry. So I just stuck to what worked well, which was English, Bulgarian language, writing, and music and things like that. And the rest I just tried and pushed through. Later in university, I did go to uni, I did struggle. It meant that mostly for failing to give in work on time.
Mhm.
So that meant I had to do a lot of work and take exams during the summers because then urgency would kick in. I didn't realize that back then, but urgency would kick in. If you don't, pass now, you're failing. So I would get motivated to pass and I would actually really great. But most of the time, again, I was like, you have 6 months or you have a whole year to work on this thing or thesis or whatever. What were you doing that now you need to scramble for like the last 3 weeks of summer? But I did go through that as well. And because learning didn't stop for me there, and with these roles that I've taken there, oh, I've always started with not I kind of fall into them. So there's a lot of learning to do there. But because that was more my areas, English as a foreign, teaching English as a foreign language, and then moved into release management and change management. And because that worked, I kind of whizzed through the learning there better. So that was the first time that I actually realized there's something about environments. There's something about an environment that's more right for you and an environment that's not as right for you. But in my 20s, I didn't put in too deep of a thought into this, just kind of knew that it would make a difference. And then in my head, it was like, an employer or a workplace is maybe not the right environment. What do? You change it. And then the job hopping became a thing. So, yeah, from school all the way through to now, it's been the same thing showing up in pretty similar ways. And I didn't know what it was.
We're going to get to the now part in a minute. I think what I wanted to ask as well, like we asked, how were you at school, like growing up? And you mentioned that your husband is also
Yeah.
neurodivergent.
Yeah.
So, how were your relationships growing up? And starting from, friendships when you were a child, and then going into first relationships, ending up with your husband who is also neurodivergent, but you didn't know.
I didn't know. I didn't know. And that was such a revelation kind thing, relationship for me. I was 18 at that time. We've been together for 21 years, almost will be this year. No, 21 years, yeah, being
Wow.
together. Yeah, I know. But he was my, special person. And our nervous systems and our brains, when they've been working in a similar way and we didn't know why, but it worked beautifully. But until then, in terms of friendships, I would have people like be around me because I was always kind of that funny one or someone who's up for things. And a lot of my relationships were quite superficial in that sense. In terms of friendships, I've not really connected throughout all of my life, most of my life, not really connected with somebody to a point where, how people say they've got a best friend or a girl group, and I've never had that. And that might be the whole autistic bit in me playing a role in that a little bit. But I realized kind of, and that was before diagnosis actually, on one of my self-help journeys paths, that I want to also take from relationships. Like when I meet someone new or when we spend time together, let's say, I don't know, a coworker you vibe more with, or somebody you met on LinkedIn. I've made fantastic kind of acquaintances on LinkedIn, but across the board, I wanted to be able to take something too. I don't want to be the only, I mean, that will sound horrible, but I don't want to be the funny one. I want somebody to make me laugh, and I don't want to be the deep conversationalist. I want somebody to, take support my depth from them. I don't want to be the wise old man always and giving the insight and stuff like that. So what is in for me in these relationships, and they felt quite empty as well, although I was doing my best to share from me in the most open way, and that has come and stopped me in the back a few times as well. So at some point I was like, I must be doing relationships very wrong, because look at those friendship groups over there, and look at me here, left disappointed after sharing a bit of my soul for yet another time, and probably overshared, and probably it was inappropriate, and probably, and whatever it was, I'm sat here on my own, like, what's going on? So it's been mostly hopeful in terms of connecting to
Hmm.
people, but not sustaining me and my needs and what I'd like to get out of a good connection.
Not fulfilling,
Yes,
right?
that's it. That's it. Now, everybody who's known me throughout the years, I don't want them to think that, yeah, sit together and have a conversation and think this person is not hitting the mark. It's not like that. But, on a deeper level, I've
Yeah.
struggled with closeness.
And how has your relationship with your husband changed after your diagnosis and his diagnosis?
It's I love this bit. I love it because now, when you're together for so long, and we have a boy together, we've lived across countries together, across towns and cities. We've had 12, we rented 12 homes before we got our first home together. Lots of moving and moving bits and stuff like that, and doing life together in different cultures. You'll be in each other's faces a lot, and friction would come out of that. Like, inevitably it will come out of that. And when you're on a short fuse nervous system, both of you, sparks fly, and not always in the most positive way. So once we got diagnosed, first of all, there was a huge sense of exhaling for the first time. You get into, let's say, an argument or a heated discussion, and everybody was and for the first time it was like, let's breathe out, I get you. And that I've been seen throughout the years as quite argumentative. Now we both know, oh, those asking questions all the time, it doesn't come from a desire to drill into it for the sake of it, but it's actually how my brain processes and makes connections. And when he's, for example, let's say he said, let's go to Spain this year, and summer comes, and he's go, oh, I wonder whether Bulgaria would be nice this time of year. I'm like, well, you said Spain. What's this about? So it's this kind of commitments that kind of, we're so flexible and agile that nothing stays the same for long. And now we both realize, oh, that's our nervous system, that's our brain. So now, during heated conversations, there's a lot more um, knowing glances we throw each other with like, watch out for the thing. That's the thing. And it's become just another way to relate to each other in a more jokey way. And it's really helped us with our boy as well. My boy will be 13 soon. We are in full blown teen territory. And it's easy when you want to do the best for that precious person in your life and you want to steer him the best way you can. It's easy to get into that naggy mode, or it's easy to get into that, oh, you committed to that mode and you didn't do it. And now I'm like, no, 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 none of that. Never, never why you said you throw out the trash and you didn't do it. Never a sentence in our lives anymore, because now we know it's inattentive ADHD. We know it, we see it. Let's work with it.
So, how is it living in a household of like full neurodivergence?
It's the best thing. It's the funniest thing. It's There's loads of kind of energy and ideas and new hobbies. Our hobby graveyard is huge and I love it. Like there's so many things to try and do and discuss. We discuss like our boy, we pull him into our discussions, be it, I don't know, politics or the Netflix show we are watching or whatever it is. He's part of the tribe, and there's always animation in some sort, be it a conversation or a new board game we're trying, or dreaming about the future, or thinking what we're gonna do. There's a lot of creative energy in this sense, and I absolutely love it. There was that before, but we kind of viewed it in a little bit of a different way. Like before, we knew he likes producing music on his computer,
Hmm.
and before we knew about ADHD, we were like, oh, he's avoiding his homework. No, he's not avoiding his homework. He's, hyper focusing on something different and creative now, and that's okay. Or when my husband, he's notorious with electronics and he likes tinkering with it. He builds things, builds radios, builds whatever. So before it's been like, that's quite a niche hobby. Like, what is it? What is it? And now it's like, wow, you've gone so deep in a topic that you actually understand how to build a radio from a 3D printing parts he does. That is absolutely mind blowing and amazing. And that's your ADHD kind of smashing it. And why not? So the 3D printer is proudly displayed in a room. You have almost entirely for crafts and stuff like that. Instead of before was like he dragged another thing, another kit, another toolkit into the house.
So, would you say that the diagnosis helped your family in a way?
Yeah, 100%, and in massive, massive ways. And I'd like to just say here, if it weren't for diagnosis, it would have still helped, because we're all based in the UK at the moment, and it's huge waiting lists to get assessed for ADHD, and some people wait for many, many years. And even if you haven't had your assessment yet, but you're already kind of living the lived experience and you've done the research and you recognize these traits in yourself and you've even been able to accommodate yourself through life with these traits, it still counts. It still counts, because we ended up going private, but if we hadn't had that diagnosis yet and we were still placed on a waiting list with the NHS, we wouldn't have embraced it any less. Like it's a truth for us, and we get it, we understand it. It's not the diagnosis that made the change. It's the awareness and the opportunity to view yourself in this way, and the opportunity to finally belong to a community, as you said in the beginning. Neurokin for the win.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go back to that, to the second burnout that you said,
Yeah.
you had the first one, then you decided to power through it. I'm going to change something, it's going to get better, and it didn't. And then finally, you left your job, and what happens then?
So at that time, I was already kind of watching my sister's journey closely. I was recognizing traits. I was already having my autism conversation. So it was clear to me that I was on the right path to kind of get to the bottom of why am I like that? My question, why am I like that? And at that time I was finally, I can go out and look for proper support. This is my time. No more self-help books or, improvised therapy sessions with family members or journaling. I'm big on the tarot, kind of my spiritual journey and stuff like that. No more trying to squeeze self-support out of that. I can go out into the world and I'm gonna get the real thing. And I went out into the world and I didn't find much because when you kind of get into diagnosed, and especially for ADHD, the default thing out there is meds for you. We have these meds for you, or nothing, pretty much nothing. So I kind of researched more around coaching and what coaching could do for me. Been doing coaching sessions with a fantastic IFS informed coach over the years since my first burnout. And I've had great positive impact from that. So I was like, it was not ADHD coaching because we didn't know, but I was like, coaching is the thing, the one thing that's really, really helped. But because I was in burnout, I didn't have the emotional capacity or physical capacity to actually see a life coach at that time. And I couldn't sustain the schedule and I couldn't, like, I was struggling with social overwhelm really, really bad. So what were my options then if I didn't want to hop onto meds straight away, and try and explore my options? And I also wasn't fit for life coaching at the time. What's happening? What do I do? Was this for nothing? Yeah. So then, because I'd left my role, I was like, this is maybe an opportunity, a window of opportunity for me to explore what I can bring to the world, and maybe I can fill some of that gap in a way. And my husband happens to be a tech guru, and he's also AI architect. So on the bleeding edge of that technology. And we were like, can we actually try and give coaching a different shape and form so that it's actually accessible to people like me who struggle in the way like I do at the moment? And it turned into a full-blown startup from there. But when I left that role, I didn't leave it with, I'm going to leave now and I'm going to do this startup. No, it wasn't like that. I just couldn't sustain I just couldn't stay in that role.
Yeah.
It was such a toll on my mental health and everything that stems from that I just couldn't. So I left without a plan. I said to myself, you've worked hard all of these years. You got the bag of money that they throwed at you and the cost you paid, you know what it is. So now maybe take some time off and see what comes out from that. Yeah.
And what did it take, like both emotionally and practically, to have that big leap of faith into yourselves, like into both of you, because you were doing this together to
Yeah.
build this new platform?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it was, I never, like, I cherish the change manager in me. I love, the business engagement work and the communications work and how it supports, businesses to get on the transformation journey that they want to and to make that successful. So I was like, I'm no less of a change manager now that I left this role, and I'm gonna use that and explore opportunities to use that. So first thing that came to mind was, well, I've been in comms for so long. I can write copy. I enjoy writing copy. Where can I write? Who? LinkedIn. And then I'm realizing I've got so much to say with this advocacy work. Where can I pour this? Oop, a book. So it kind of started, the ball started rolling like that. But this time, and it's surprising me that I was feeling that way. This time it didn't take much to take the leap of faith because I knew it was not that. It was not that. That was not my place. That was not my thing to stay and do and try and power through. And I was so, for the first time in my life, I was so empowered knowing why for the first time that I was like, I've got ADHD, then that must mean that I can apply myself in this way and I can trailblaze and I can, everything else that comes with ADHD, that creativity and that burst of energy and flexibility and whatever it is. And this time I knew that I didn't have to sustain it and make it the same every single day. And that gave me so much relief that it doesn't need to be same peak performance Monday to Friday every hour of the day. I could now accommodate better myself better. So it didn't take much. I was actually happy. It's like I need the breather. I need the help. I can always get back into change if I want to. Like, people are struggling for good change managers at the moment. And for my husband, my co-founder, my co-author, my person, it
Your
wasn't much.
partner for life.
Yeah, exactly. Everything together. And it wasn't much different because now he was sitting on this idea and now he was in and architecturing, that's not a word, in a brand new space. And imagine all the opportunity, all the novelty that comes with that, all of that. So he really, really applied himself and his years of, he used to be an technology manager. He used to be in that techie space anyways. So he was like, let's make it happen. And I was like, no, we can't use AI. AI will butcher our coaching. It wouldn't keep our voice. It will start telling people some things. He was like, no, no, we're gonna rein it in. There is a way to make this thing work with us. And we did. We actually stripped AI of all authority and it is now just there to conduct the chats and nothing else. It turned out you just can't make it do what you want to do. So we worked around that, and for him that was such a huge project. That is self affirming project, because everything he had to give it with his innovative brain and the way he grasps technology, and he's been giving that to employers over the years and always misunderstood and always trying to push in directions that people are not interested in because we have a 2-year plan and now we gotta stick to it. It's like AI is in the room. You can't stick to your 2-year plan. It's things like that, and having the freedom to go for what you actually believe is a massive thing. Yeah.
It's the concept that of ikigai, the Japanese concept
Yes.
of ikigai. It's finding that thing that drives you, right? And it's that intersection of what are you good at? What can you be paid for? What does the world need?
Yeah.
When you find that intersection, you find your ikigai. And in a way, like through your journey, the both of you have found it together. And I think this is extremely, it's powerful, but it's affirming and it's a positive message because I'm thinking about the reason why I've started this podcast. And it's the idea of that moving further away from that toxic positivity of ADHD is your
Yeah.
superpower. And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you haven't lived in my life for a day because otherwise you would know that it's not. It's actually crippling. But when things like this happen, when you find your tribe, you finally let go of that shame, the guilt, and all those things that have pushed you down for years, you start self-accepting, you start self-love in a way that you've never experienced before. Then you start to see like the positive seeping through, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, getting rid of that shame and negativity and things I've put on my shoulders to bear, although they were never mine to bear. It's still a work in progress for me to transmute through all of that. But it's one of the bigger things that internal family systems informed coaching has done for me, because it's all about integrating those disintegrated part of yourself, multiple parts of yourself, and looking at everything and realizing that everything has value, everything is you, and everything is kind of part of that path you've been on. And that's really how, I mean, I wouldn't be holding my own book today if I hadn't gone through that acceptance, because the first time when I thought, oh, I'm gonna write a book, the first thing I heard in my head was, how you write the book, it's gonna take 300 pages and you can't even be consistent for two. This was the first voice in my head. So working with those voices and those parts of us that feel and think that way has been transformative. I really can say that I've started shedding some of that shame and some of that self imposed criticism and stuff like that. And it's really helping.
I'm going to finish with the signature questions of the podcast. And the first one is my favorite one, which is, how do you feel about chit chats and small talks?
I can do it. I can do it and I can smash it and I can keep the vibes high. And I've learned to do that. I have scripts, things you could say to new coworkers, things you could say to people who are selling you the bread in the bakery. And I perform it great. And it feels completely empty to me. It just feels completely empty. But I try and be a good citizen, and I don't want people around me to think that there's something about them that she's not engaging with me. So I play my part and I just kind of push through it.
The other question is, what are two traits or, one that you genuinely love about yourself? And what is the trait that, or the traits that you still find particularly hard to live with?
Is this a trap? Like we just talk about self love and self acceptance, and I should be good and say I can find something to appreciate in everything. But I do, the thing I most love about myself, maybe two things, is first creativity.
Mm.
I am blown away sometimes from the creativity that and things that my brain thinks up, from sewing to beading to making micro coaching platforms and writing books is the same trait, which I absolutely love. And I've learned to lean into that and run with it a little bit more. So that I love. And the other thing I love is, when I was ranting about not being able to find kind of more meaningful relationships and connections, I wasn't entirely fair, because I love this quality in me that helps me to go deep and connect with people. And even if I don't see it on the other end, and even if it's not fully reciprocated to the over exaggerated depth that I'm looking for in my own head and heart, I have then connected. So I love this quality in me that is able to be open and vulnerable and connect and give from myself in this way. And the most enjoyable moments I have, even with my own son, or talking to my sister or husband, or connecting with people, is coming from that, because I was capable, I had the trait to pave for that connection, which I love and I'm grateful for. Everything else is shambles. No, I mean, I don't want to go through and bash traits and sides of my personality or how my nervous system is or brain is, because there will be too many to mention. I don't love when I have committed wholeheartedly to something in my head and heart, and I witness myself just not be able to get closer to that. And it's not just things like you hear from everybody, oh, I'm going to exercise more, or I'm going to do this. It's not just about that. It's where I have found a little bit of self accommodation into something that I want to do, learn, or perform, or explore, and I just can't get myself to do that. It feels a little bit like I want to be the person who loves playing board games with their family. So I buy board games, and now I have a stack of board games, and I've never played board games with my family. It's this kind of discrepancy when you ache for something from a place of this is going to be good for me, for us, for everyone, and you still can't get yourself to a place where you can actually do it. That is the thing that is most I struggle with most.
Yana, thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing so openly. Like, I really appreciated your time. And I really hope that whoever listens to this podcast feels like the same that I did, like getting to know you.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I must tell you, I did come up with an agenda to not overshare. Maybe I didn't stick to it, but it feels so refreshing to be able to offer parts of yourself in this way. And, one of the other things that changes with the diagnosis is now you talk to a community, now you talk to people that maybe experience these things to some extent, and it just feels warmer. So I'm happy to share and apologize for oversharing if I have, but it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank
And
you.
you.
The Spacious Brain podcast will come back soon with a new episode and new stories to share. So stay tuned and follow me now, before you forget.